This is the School Success Podcast, a podcast for school leaders to learn from other school leaders what's working and what's not, and to get inspiration and encouragement, as well as strategies to grow school enrollment, connect with families, retain teachers, recruit teachers, and everything in between. You guys are heroes, and I cannot thank you enough for pouring into this next generation that's coming behind us. My goal is you will take at least one thing away from every episode that you can take back to your school to make it better than it is right now. Please enjoy the School Success Podcast. This podcast is brought to you by the Herzog Foundation.
Time for school.
Hey, School Success Makers. Welcome to another edition of the School Success Podcast. I'm your host, Mitchell Slater, and I'm joined by a new friend out of the Virginia area, the DC area, Mr. Mehan. And he is the best-selling author of several children's books, and now he has written the American Book of Fables. It's available on Amazon and everywhere else, and it is a family book for all ages, for littles, middles, and bigs. He is also Dr. Mehan, Associate Dean and Associate Professor of Government for Hillsdale College in DC on Capitol Hill. He raises his family, however, in the Seneca Hills above Washington in Northern Virginia. And we have a fun one for you guys today because of this new book that he just released that you guys are all going to get a chance to buy in honor of America's 250th birthday, which is pretty exciting and pretty cool. So we're going to dive all into that today and what it means to be a proud American citizen, which I hope all of you guys are if you are an American citizen. So before we jump in, obviously always pass it off to our guests to just introduce themselves real quick. So Mr. Matthew, Dr. Mehan, however you want to go by today, welcome to the podcast today, sir.
Well, thanks for having me. It's great to be on. I'm honored. It's fun to be giving this book to everybody and showing them America.
Love it. Well, I love my country and I love books because I love reading to my son, my daughter. And so this will be added right to the collection, which will be really, really cool. But before we jump into everything books, you get the same question that everybody else gets before we jump into the actual nitty gritty of the podcast. And it is this: if I was to visit you in the DC area, what would you say, Mitchell, you need to eat this and do this to experience the DC area?
I would go to the Library of Congress because it's the most beautiful book in the nation's capital and often unvisited in favor of all the more obvious places. And then I would send you to the Archives building to see the Declaration of the Constitution, which is, in its one sense, what it's all about. Those are the two places I would send you. And then what I would tell you to eat, I would probably send you to Lido's Pizza, which we're not a good pizza town, but that is very good, and I just strongly recommend it.
Love it. Well, I love pizza. Lido's Pizza. I'll have to go get some pizza from Lido's. So as we jump in, let's do this. Give me your background first before we jump into this book. You can share obviously any other books you've written too, but give me your background, how you got here today, and obviously I know you're teaching and you're writing, but let's get Mr. Mehan's background.
So I got a liberal arts education in college, studied literature and politics together. And then I was headed to go work on Capitol Hill and join the rat race and become sort of a politico. And frankly, I started reading about the kind of education leaders used to get and no longer get, and realized that the republic was going to crash if education didn't get a serious sort of shot in the arm, meaning we were sort of, it doesn't matter how many good-willed people are running around Washington if they don't know what to do or how to do it, and they have none of the sort of know-how to really maintain the republic and defeat Team Bad Guy, as I refer to them. Usually ignorant, sometimes ill-willed people in Washington. We know who they are. So I actually balked and decided, no, I'm going to go into education. And so I taught for 20 years at a prep school. In that time, I started designing civics curriculum and liberal arts curriculum, which we then exported to other schools and helped states and charter school initiatives. And so I became kind of a curricular designer. And then my dissertation, which I earned along the way, was in leadership education of the sort the founders had. And so then I wound up being asked by Hillsdale College to help design and start their new graduate school of government, now 7.5 years old, here on Capitol Hill, which is going wonderfully. And I'm the dean, one of the deans of the college out here. And then, I had kids. I didn't like a lot of the children's books on the shelves. And I said, I had a very dear friend who was an incredibly well-trained artist. And I said, instead of going for used bookstores to find good old books, why don't we just make a few new beautiful ones? And so that's what my dear friend John Foley, who's a realist impressionist trained in the Boston School of 𝒂𝒏𝒂𝒏, can trace his line all the way back to Florence, to Raphael's workshop. Yeah, that guy, the real Raphael. We just started doing this as a kind of side gig, and the side hustle has become more of a kind of major hustle in our lives with this big third book.
Love it, man. Well, I know books are so incredibly important to obviously raising up children and students, and obviously on into college. It's a big piece my mom instilled in me in my homeschool years, and it's something we're doing the same thing for my kiddos. I love reading to them, and obviously reading good books, like actually good books. I feel like I kind of came to a realization a few years ago. You read some, you're like, these are awful. Like these are just like they're not even good. There's no sustenance, or sustenance inside the book. And so I've been trying to expand our horizons a little bit, and obviously we've gotten into Narnia and some of these different books that are just like great stories that we've dove into, and I've loved it. And so if you see, you've piqued my interest with what you're doing. So tell me a little bit about the story behind what this new book is, what's it based off of, and why should somebody get a copy of it?
Yeah, it's called The American Book of Fables. It's right there. It's a surprisingly big monster sort of heirloom book for A250, kind of on your coffee table, but you can sort of take it and go get lost in America. Look, the short version is America has a crisis of hope, optimism, and patriotism. And this book is a kind of antidote to those things, to really give families a way of reconsidering our past so they can basically sort of add another brick in the edifice of America, right, and actually contribute in a constructive way, because we have to foster gratitude in order to be good citizens and good people. We have to be thankful and then want to be of service to others so that others who come after us can look up to us too, right? We have to be great ourselves. So the book is 13 chapters for 13 colonies. It goes to 13 regions of the country, and it takes up 13 parts, phrases, paragraphs of the Declaration of Independence, and explains them through nursery rhymes for littles, both old and new, that are keyed to the region, and fables for the middles, both old and new, keyed to the region and updated. So instead of the lion and the tiger, it's the buffalo, the beaver, and the bald eagle, but also local history and a lot of lovely touches that have to do with our founding and settlement history and the principles of our country and the Declaration. And then for bigs, it has short stories, primary sources with some brief explanations, dialogues. Think Animal Farm meets a sort of Socratic seminar meets a madcap comedy, following Hugh the manatee from the Everglades. Hugh Manatee goes on a journey throughout the lower 48, picking up friends along the way. He learns a lot about the country, and he teaches a lot about human nature and nature's God.
I love the humanity, since I live in Florida. So the humanities. How's this manatee going through America if he needs water? How's that work?
So it's like one of my favorite comedic through lines of the book is finding various and ridiculous ways to get a 2,000 pound marine mammal. He's on the top of a stagecoach. He's craned off of a riverboat. He's on the cover. He's in the back of a Ford F-250, for the 250th. So there's all kinds of, he gets Chinook helicoptered across the Great Basin and the Cascade Mountains. It gets ridiculous. But eventually he takes a train home to the Everglades. But yeah, the book starts in the Everglades. You learn a lot about Florida's ecology and the creatures there, but also about the local history and settlement of Florida, the Seminole Wars in the Everglades. But you also learn a lot about what it means to be in Congress. What does it mean to be a social animal? Why do we get together? What's a legislature for? But then you move on from there up the coast like a manatee. I don't know if you know this, but manatees actually graze as far up as Boston. I didn't know this until I did the research for the book. You learn a lot about the natural world and the geology and geography of the country too in this book. But we go up the coast through the Great Bays, New England, then down the St. Lawrence Seaway to chapter 4 on life, which is in the sort of the watery, lively place of the great rivers and Great Lakes. Then we go Liberty, and we do the Great Plains, sort of where the buffalo roam and the cowboys. Then we do the Pursuit of Happiness, got to climb the mountain of virtue up in the Front Range of Colorado, on through the mesas, the deserts. We do the Upper Missouri, Yellowstone, the West Coast. Glacier National is the closer at the backbone of the world, the Continental Divide.
So the structure of this book would not be, I would sit down and read it for an hour and a half to my 6-year-old. It would be like, read a little bit, talk about it. Is that kind of the structure of how you want it to flow?
I'm sort of a use every part of the buffalo, right? Meaning there's always more than one way to skin a cat. The book can be picked up in small bursts, like a Bill Bennett's book of virtues. You could just take up one chapter and read about liberty, and read nursery rhymes and poems and fables and primary sources and cool adventures there. But you can also read the whole thing through, and it does actually have a full narrative arc, and it will move you. It is designed to move your heart and mind towards a greater and more intelligent patriotism about America and how to be a good American and a good man and a good woman and a good member of your family and your society. But you can kind of do it either which way. So if you want, you can read it just straight through, but it's episodic. Think of the book of Proverbs, right? You can just open it up and read like 2 Proverbs, and they're interesting to chew on, right? Mm-hmm. But you can also, if you read it all together, it has a kind of strange argument, even though you're like, what are we doing here? And then we're here, and then we're here. But if you read the whole chapter, you're like, that chapter is about something, right? So I tried to do it in imitation of that kind of tradition, which is the old Aesop's fable tradition. It seems like they're just one fable, but they actually stack, right? They actually make an argument kind of indirectly. And then if you want, you can just read just the stories of humanity, which there's, 1 or 2 in every chapter. And that, eventually I'll probably re-release it as just like a 120-page book just of the adventure of humanity. So there's a lot of ways to read it. It's an heirloom book.
Okay. Is there a few from the Aesop's piece is going like, I took 50 from Aesop's fables and put them in there? Or like, how did you decide which ones to recreate inside of your book?
I basically said, I want to explain each part of the Declaration of Independence. So, if we're talking about nature and nature's God, what are the ones that kind of explain that? Or what does it mean? Prudence indeed shall dictate. So which are the fables from Aesop that most sort of teach the virtue of prudence, right? So I would sort of pick on those benefits, but also which ones would allow me to adapt the animals and to the folklore of a local region, right? The gold mining and claim jumper stuff of Nevada, right? And the California gold rush on the eastern slope of the California Cascade Mountains. I wound up, there's an old one about a sword. I turned it to a revolver and made it about gold mining and claim jumping, but it's about like prudence and greed and being careful, right? With greedy people around. So, the Brits wanted all of our goods, right? And services. So there's all these kind of fun tie-ins, but I'd say about half of the fables are my own. And then half are adapted from Aesop, from Hesiod, from the tradition, different fabulists from the tradition.
Does it mention that in the actual book itself, or maybe in the credits saying like, hey, this one based off of this was based off of this?
I tried to not make a big deal out of it because frankly, I kind of want to just disappear into the book. Like I don't want it to be just about me. I want it to be about like just the fables. So, but I do say when it's not me, it says adapted from Aesop or greatly adapted from Aesop or adapted from Hesiod. Generally speaking. And for the nursery rhymes, it's, the melodies of Father Goose, yours truly. I'm not a mother, so I'm Father Goose. And some of those it's Humpty Dumpty and it's not me. Some I cite because they came out of a particular writer of nursery rhyme fables. And some I adapt slightly. So it's a little me and a little Mother Goose. And some I make up whole cloth, some new nursery rhymes or add a second verse to a nursery rhyme.
Hey, school success makers, Mitchell here. I just want to take a really quick break from the show to give a big, huge shout out to the Herzog Foundation. I absolutely love the Herzog Foundation. I've been friends and partners with them for a couple years now, but we're bringing it to a whole new level. And I'm excited to share that our very own School Success podcast is now featured on the Herzog Foundation podcast network. The Herzog Foundation is a powerhouse of resources designed to support schools like yours, from free training events through the Herzog Foundation Institute to their incredible online news publication, The Lion, and of course, our new podcast, Home. They have everything you need to stay informed and inspired. And if you're dreaming of starting your own Christian school or co-op, don't miss their online course, Schoolbox. It's a fantastic resource to help you get started on the right foot. At School Success, we're proud to partner with the Herzog Foundation to bring you these valuable tools and insights. So visit herzogfoundation.com to explore all they have to offer. Trust me, you won't want to miss out on these amazing opportunities for growth and success. And I love all the people over there, and I know you guys will too. So please go check them out, and you won't be disappointed. Now, back to the show. So obviously, it's no secret here. In 250 years of America, it's not been a perfect, sinless past. Like, there's been things obviously we're not proud of a country, but it's gotten us to obviously where we are today. Does it dive into any of those things that obviously we aren't proud of, but it maybe reference them? So as a child learning it, like, it maybe gives us opportunities to share some of these pieces of our past that weren't great, but here's how we got through those as a country. Does it dive into any of those?
Yes. So I do it differently than others, I think. And I think I'm doing it in a more careful, ethical way, which I'll describe briefly as this. I don't just say pros and cons, goods and bads. I try to show that there are flaws and faults that are serious, right? And that had to be overcome. But I try to make sure that the magnification is on the good done to overcome those things, and then other goods that were just done irrespective of evil, right? So I don't hide from warts, but I try not to sort of zoom the camera in on them. But you have to know they're there, and you have to know we overcame them. So because I want people to have gratitude for the past. And I think that a lot of people say, no, we're going 50-50, goods and bads. I was like, well, but that's not how you think about your parents, right? Like, that's not how you think about anything you love. Like you think about the good mostly, but you don't ignore or hide from the bad. So we talk about the Indian Wars and the problems, how we were too impatient with them, sometimes too greedy, but also how I also try to highlight stories of how patient we were at times with people who did not follow Christian rules of war, right? And would just kill and attack children, right? And difficult stuff. That's in the big section, but even then I kind of warn parents. I have a sequence where we're talking about the fights in New England. And I have a chickadee mother who's constantly sort of covering the ears of her little chick. So the parents know, like, this is a little grim. You can sort of choose to skip this paragraph if you want, that kind of thing. But I handle it, we deal with slavery in the chapter on liberty in the Great Plains. We talk about Bleeding Kansas and how people were there, like, bullying abolitionists who came to try to make it a free state. And then they took over towns and drove them out of their homes and burned their homes down, right? So we deal with some pretty, serious things that are difficult. But we try to do it, one, gently, so the whole family can enjoy it, but two, with an eye to making sure we magnify the things we want to emulate about our past, not the things we want to criticize.
Is there any biblical piece to this book of, like, hey, you read the story and then, hey, there's a Bible verse for a reference maybe to this, or is it strictly just American based?
No. So, I mean, nature and nature's God, right? Judge of the world. Like, the Declaration of Independence is providential. And I would say providence actually features as a kind of main character in the book. And by the end, there's a very big teaching on God's providence as an important part of American optimism and how we ought to operate with one another and with our own planning our own lives. I have Shaker tunes that are sort of modernized and, kind of just made more generally acceptable, because some of the things the Shakers believe were not what most Christians believe, frankly. But I try to have a few prayers. I take a New England primer poem that is an alphabet that talks about Greek and Roman classical things and mixes it with biblical stories and Christian things. And I kind of update that and retell that poem for the 21st century. It's a really fun ABC poem from the New England primer, but sort of modernized by yours truly with some extra creativity. I have a section from one of Paul's letters. And there's actually a buffalo in the Great Plains. His name is Paul. And he's sort of constantly, without really citing, he's always like using St. Paul to make his points in funny ways. And everyone's like, that sounds familiar. And he's like, oh, it doesn't matter. Sort of. So I try to bring in the fact that this is a nation that loves God, and the Bible is one of our foundational cultural texts. And I don't hide from that at all.
Is there any piece of the book as you're reading it, if reading to a child or teenager, it doesn't matter, if they're reading it and they're like, ooh, I want to know more about that, is there a clear distinction of like, if you want to know more about this, search this or find this book or put this into ChatGPT or Wikipedia and read more about this, what's going on here? Is there any correlation, or you kind of have to guess how to like search it so you can know more of the context of what was happening?
So 2 answers to that. One, I have a little more freedom and fun in the Google era, to where like, oh, that name, I'm going to Google that and see if something comes up. And 99 times out of 100, you will get a neat story about U.S. history from a name that pops up in a fable. So I kind of rely on Google to sort of do some of that work for me. On July 4th, I believe on July 4th, we're going to launch, there's a QR code in the back of the book for a grand old glossary and an American almanac, which will give sort of background information and some fun extra ideas about different parts of the book, and what is this story about, and sort of backgrounders and things like that. So if you want to learn more, you can print up these little PDFs. They're not little, they're long, but these PDFs of and learn more about some of the background information about the country. But for instance, like I have a fable about Council Bluffs, Kansas. That's the last forested and watered place before you hit the Great Plains. And it's where everybody would take counsel and build up a wagon train of different groups so they could safely cross together, because it was Indian territory and it was not safe. And you needed a guide because it was very hard to find water, and people would actually die of dehydration out there. Their horses would dehydrate and then they would. So I tell one of the fables there, and just sort of, it's a kind of just an introductory 3 lines about, did you know that this is this place that was a very popular and famous place? And so that kind of just learn about the beautiful stories and the little odds and ends of our culture and country. I think A250 is a perfect opportunity to sort of reintroduce that for families.
I love the timing of all this. Obviously, with coming out on the 250th. How long have you been working on this, or how long was this on your mind for you to bring this to fruition?
We're talking 2001. I started working on an Animeralia.
Whoa!
I set it aside for other projects. It was supposed to be part of my first book, Mr. Mehan's Mildly Amusing Mythical Mammals, with an Animeralia attached as an addendum. The publisher very wisely said, that's too much. Get rid of the Animeralia. So I had this Aesopic program going for a long time. But I'd say about 5 years ago, I realized that A250 and an American book of fables would be the best way to kind of bring all this forward. And then I set about researching. I did conferences on the fable tradition. I wrote a white paper on the founders' imagination and what they had in their storyscape and their heroes and their imagination. So I did a lot of pre-work. And then we won an NEH grant, and my illustrator and I traveled around the country doing research. I went to national parks all over the country. I got chased by a saltwater crocodile down in the Everglades. I found manatee in the Biscayne Bay. Just did a lot of research, and went to Yellowstone, Monterey Bay, all over. Cool. And so the research and the writing has been very concentrated over the last year, but the buildup has been decades.
So you're not saying ChatGPT wrote all this for you in like 3 months and just put it out there so you could print it?
So Grok writes one part of the book. I actually Hugh the manatee, when he goes to Silicon Valley, he goes over the San Juans and he gets to the ocean, and he meets a Grok-powered robotic elephant seal. And they actually have a debate about what is human nature and how you have to be careful talking with the bots. It's kind of a morality tale, a fable for the modern soul engaging with ChatGPT, and how to make sure you don't become inhuman dealing with the bots. But that's the only AI that writes. And I actually I told Grok, you're a robotic elephant seal. You're going to get into this debate. And then I just let it go, and it played its role perfectly. So it was very, very fun. Love a literary first. It was a literary first.
Well, obviously, I know you love America. You proves it by this book, obviously what you do for a living and teaching and making sure people understand it. But for those listening, if you're like, hey, I really want you guys to understand this, like this is the takeaway I really want from this book. If you buy it, read it with your kids and your families and you pass it on, like what is your end goal? What do you want to have happen because of writing this and spending all these years doing this? What is your end goal that you want to see happen?
I want the American people to have a fully furnished imagination again, such that they can govern themselves with wit and wisdom the way our forefathers did. That's principally, it's about the maintenance and sustaining of our way of life, which is that of a joyous and optimistic, free people that have goodness and truth, but justice and liberty in law. And that is hard to do. It takes a lot of work, and I tried to make the most delightful and easy way to get started on that again in a way that I think hasn't been done in a long time, and we're feeling the negative effects in our social and political life now. So that's what it's for, and that's why I did all this work. You
mentioned at the beginning that the founding fathers, like the way they had education is not like, we're trying to get back to that in a lot of ways with some of the schools. What was, if you were to kind of articulate that in maybe a simple way for everybody to understand, like, hey, this is what the founding fathers had. What was it? A whole bunch of fables and stories that like taught them, informed them to who they were, and they brought that over to be what America is? Like, what was a little bit of that background that you're trying to also bring back from what they had?
Yeah, so I'll give you some principles that I like, some categories that they care deeply about. One is they had an extremely moral imagination, one that was joyful, right? That is, they weren't scolds, but they saw the folly of foolish things very carefully and clearly. They had a way of seeing the moral life that was so much more adept than our own. We tend to have, like, what's bad? Bullying. It was like, well, but there's a lot of bad things in high school and grade school, right? Like, they were very kind of clever about that. And so they had this, the fable tradition helps with that kind of witty, wise way of, it's a virtue, but then how do you do the virtue, right? What's the practical way? It was biblical. There was a biblical imagination full of profound and deep teachings about God, but also about ethics there. And that's a, very fruitful world for, learning how to live well. It was Roman, very Roman Republican, right? We had Roman heroes. We understood liberty and law. We understood conscience. We understood bravery and self-sacrifice for others in a way. And we used to, like Publius, Regulus, Camillus, Cincinnatus, all these heroes of our founding fathers that they saw themselves imitating. We don't have that so ready to mind anymore. And so I try to reintroduce Cicero is a huge part of the book. And he was the most influential Roman philosopher for republicanism and self-government that the founders used. So I bring him in various subtle, funny ways in fable, but also sometimes he even appears as a primary source in the big section. And then I think the other one was, it was stoical, but not pagan in a bad way, but like a good sense of, like, you have to understand that you have to be detached and that you will die one day. And that at the end of the day, it's not just about your own comforts. It's about living well so that you are prepared for a good death and you set an example for everyone else to follow you, right? Sort of all those things I found were really powerful and pronounced in their imagination, in their art, in their literature, children and otherwise. And so I try to represent those things, but also, like I said before, wit and wisdom. We underestimate wit. It's a virtue to be witty. Why do we invent stand-up comedy? Why do the Democratic Republic of America, why did we come up with so much humor and wit and also inventiveness? That cleverness, the ability to shift for yourself rather than sit around like a slave or a subject waiting for someone to do it for you, or rather a government, thus eventually a tyrant, to take over for you. That witty, wise sort of habit of mind, that's a way in which Americans were and still are in many ways, but it needs to be perpetuated, magnified, and the book does a lot of that work.
Hey, I just want to take a really quick break from the podcast to highlight one of our amazing partners and sponsors, ClassReach. If you're a new school administrator or founder and are struggling to keep up with all the hassles of planting a new school, like collecting tuition, communicating with parents, or handling student data, then you need ClassReach. ClassReach is the all-in-one software that helps with everything from admissions and tuition to classroom management and parent communications. Sign up for a free consultation with one of their school specialists and see how ClassReach can help your school grow today. You guys can check them out online, classreach.com. They are a kingdom-minded company, and I love their leadership team there. I've become friends with a lot of them. They truly are a great company. I support them, and I love them, and you guys will love them too. Check them out at classreach.com. Now, back to the show. Man, all right, well, you're winning me over, obviously, with all this stuff, because I know one of the things I feel like the school system in general is like really good at raising up just workers. Like, hey, this is what we need you to do. And it's weak in raising up like entrepreneurs and like the ones that are like, this is me, myself. When I think about, I was homeschooled my whole life and I just got to let my mind go and like explore and invent and create and all these things. And I know that that's not, it's harder to make that happen successfully in this current system. And so I want to get back to that. I want these students to be able to have the freedom to just be who they are and create and do things and not be stuck inside this system. And I kind of see that with like the founding fathers. And I hope that, and I kind of see this when you're talking about this book of like rejuvenating that and kind of like, hopefully, and I see this happening and just encouraging kids to create and make the world a better place, which I think is what you're saying this book is going to do for them.
Yeah, a more robust sense of what liberty means. Right? What does it mean to be free? Right? And it doesn't mean that you do anything you want, but it means, right, that you actually have to be the sort of active agent in bringing about the pursuit of happiness in your life and those around you, rather than waiting for someone else to solve the problem. Right? And you can say, well, but bootstrapping isn't enough and you need good laws. It's like, of course. But that's also your job too, because you're a citizen, right? So yeah, you're supposed to vote and engage that way too, right? It's sort of a habit of personal responsibility can be scoldy and lectury, like you should do your duty. But wit is sort of this really fun, free world of play that is all about doing your duty, but in the most creative way, such that you know things come out well.
Well, if all those listening, they're like, I want to check this out. I want to buy it. Where's the best place they can go? Where do you want them to go to be able to find this book?
The American Book of Fables is available everywhere. So wherever is most convenient for you. I want it in everyone's home. I want you to buy it for your friends and family. I want grandparents to have it on the coffee table for their family to come over and enjoy. I want it everywhere. So Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, Walmart, request it at your local library so others can share it. You can get it at Sophia Institute Press. But wherever you want to buy it. It's basically ubiquitous at this point.
Love it. I got one final question for you. Everybody gets the final question before we wrap it up. And it's this: if you were to share one final piece of advice for the school leaders listening, what would your one final piece of advice be?
I would say do not underestimate the importance of reconstituting or re-entering into with your curriculum Cicero's On Friendship. The art of friendship was part of the classical educational curriculum for everyone until the 20th century. And we're not very good at being friends anymore. And that is, I think, the first road to so many other transferences of goods is people are good at being friends again, and many other goods will follow. And I think schools should feel responsible to help them with that. The art of friendship.
100% agree with that. It's very true. I know community. Some people complain about, oh, it's hard to find community. I can't get community. But it's also because I think they've lost, like you said, they've lost the art of like, how do you even be a friend to build community? Because if you're not fun to be around, it's going to be hard to get friends to want to be around you if you're not a cool person. So
the virtue of wit helps with that as well.
That's good. So they should buy the book and get some wit in their life. My goodness, that's good. Dr. Mehan, thank you so much for taking time out of your day, obviously out of your whole life to write this book and pour into it. I'm excited to get it and read it to my kids and have it on the coffee table. And so I'm wishing you nothing but the best. Hope you sell a ton of them. And thank you for your love and respect for our country and what you're doing. I appreciate it, man.
Thank you, Mitchell.
Well, another huge shout out and a thank you to our guests for taking time and being on the podcast today. I love the people that I get to interview in this podcast. And as always, I'm hoping you guys are able to take at least one thing away from today's episode that you can take back to your school to make it better than it is right now. Before you guys go, I do want to make sure you are aware of our 3 free resources available here at School Success. And the first one is, of course, the podcast that you're listening to right now. We are dropping weekly episodes every single Monday morning. We want to make sure you guys aren't missing out. So if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. And if you haven't left a 5-star review, we would love a 5-star review as well. The second one is on our website, schoolsuccessmakers.com. In the top right-hand corner is a button, School Success Report. You just click that and sign up for that. We send it directly to your inbox every single week. It's full of different articles our team has either found or written to help you, the school leader, be more successful. And last but not least is our free Facebook community called School Success Makers. It's an awesome place. I'm personally in there. I'd love to see you in there as well. Get some good community around you, ask questions, and just have some fun. So make sure you are joining our free Facebook community. We'd love to see you in there. All right, guys. Well, that's it for today. We'll be back here next week with another awesome guest as usual on the School Success Podcast. We'll see you then. The views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of the Herzog Foundation.